So thanks for joining in, everyone. This is a recorded session. I think we should begin now. So just putting it out there, this is a recording session, and we would be sending you the recording later on. Uh, Let me begin by sharing my screen with you guys. And today we would be talking about Slack best practices for HR and people operations teams. The agenda today is quite packed. First, we would begin by introducing ourselves. We would talk about some tips and tricks that you can use from within Slack. Then we would talk about some specialized areas of people ops. We'd be talking about hiring, how you can go about onboarding new employees, how you can track time and attendance on Slack, and then you can also gauge employee engagement and answer questions over Slack. So we would be visiting all of this. So let's get started. First up, an introduction of ourselves. We are Anek, and we are a people management company. We make bots over Slack and other instant messaging platforms like Microsoft Teams and Google Chat. We've got three products currently: Attendance Bot, Office Amp, and Expensitron. And Attendance Bot and Expensitron, we would be visiting later on in the deck as well. They're in-house tools that we've built. But first up, some tips and tricks in Slack that can prove really useful for the people ops team. So let me just begin by pulling up Slack screen. So first up, we would be talking about how you can go ahead and change the theme of your Slack just to go ahead and personalize your Slack. So you go to preferences, and then you go to sidebar, and then you see a bunch of themes over here. And you can just click on one of the themes and customize your Slack, right? Once you are done, you can go ahead and save changes. Uh, Next up, we'd be talking about how you can go ahead and customize some of the other things in Slack. So you can also put custom emojis in Slack. The idea being that whenever somebody talks about your company, or you can just have a company logo as a custom emoji, whenever somebody talks about your company, that custom emoji would show up on Slack. You can just send that out, right? In a similar way, you can go about having customized messages within Slack. You can go ahead and have a bunch of messages, preset messages. Slack already has a lot of preset messages, but in case you want to have more custom messages from within Slack, you can go ahead and do that as well. So these were the emojis that I were earlier talking about. What I have done is that for my team, I have put in my company logo as an emoji, and whenever somebody represents one of the values that we have as a company, you can just send that out to the people, right? Uh, any questions so far?
No, no questions.
Great, great. Moving on, let's talk a bit about channels. So once you can also go ahead and create channels within Slack. Over here, you can just go ahead and just add a channel, right? So you can just click on add a channel, and then you can choose whether a channel can be public or it is private. You can go ahead and choose that as well. One of the major things is that how you manage your notifications on Slack, and Slack gives you a lot of capability to do that. So once you go to preferences, you've got a notifications section, and the idea being that if you want to minimize noise, you can just feel free to leave channels and then join them back later. You can also go ahead and choose the devices that you want notifications on. So if you don't want notifications on your mobile devices regarding everything in Slack, you can just go ahead and choose that. You can also go ahead and choose your notification preferences from certain channels. So for example, if I go to one of the channels that I have, you'd be able to see notification preferences over here. And then you can just go ahead and say that, do you want notifications from this particular channel, or not, or you can mute notifications from these channels as well. Lastly, what I would like to talk about is that in Slack, you can invite people as single channel guests and multi-channel guests. So let's see, for my company, you can just go ahead and click on invite people, and then you will see that you can invite them as multi-channel guests and single channel guests. What I would really suggest is that if you've got freelancers within your team, you can just invite them as multi-channel guests. But then there are some contractors that you work with or interns that you have, you can just go ahead and add them as single channel guests. Right. So these are just some of the tips and tricks that we have within Slack. Moving on, we will now be visiting the HR aspect, the hiring aspect of the bot. Right. So let me just, yeah. So let's talk a bit about some of the shortcuts that you can use in Slack. The idea again is to make Slack more efficient for you guys. So you can set up reminders in Slack. Most people know that they can set reminders in Slack, but they don't know that you can also remind other people in the organization to do some stuff. So you can put in a message like /remind at Glenn to do something, right? So that would make sure that Glenn gets a notification from Slack bot on that particular time to do a particular task. You can also set yourself to do not disturb. So you can just say /DND and mention the time till you want to be on the do not disturb mode. And Slack would make sure that you're doing some deep thinking and not disturbed at that point, right? You can also go ahead, set yourself to away. And if you need any help regarding the shortcuts that you have in Slack, you can also go ahead and use Control/. Moving on, now we'd be talking about some specific areas of people's operations. First up, we'd be visiting the hiring best practices. What we suggest as a best practice is that you set up a bunch of channels related to hiring. So the first channel that you set up is hiring needs, which is a private channel. And that can just be to define what kind of hiring requirements the organization has. And the HR team just collaborates on the job descriptions and defining everything related to the hiring requirements that the organization has. Then you can have a public channel, which is essentially to collect referrals from all of the employees within the organization. And you could call it open jobs. And that would be a channel that would have all of the internal job postings, and people could go ahead and make referrals related to those job postings. You can then go ahead and set up a channel called interviewing, and that would be to prep up the panelists and get feedback. And you'd obviously archive this channel after each hire. And then finally, a private channel, once again, to discuss the compensation for the various posts that you'd be handing out to the new hires, right? In case you need more help regarding hiring of employees, you can use two add-ons that I really like, Lever and Greenhouse. These are both Slack add-ons, and you can choose to use them. They prove really essential when you're hiring people. And if you're planning to transfer all of your hiring activities to Slack, Lever and Greenhouse are indispensable tools for that. Great. Now we will be looking at how Slack uses Slack to onboard new hires, right? And essentially what Slack does is, Slack, being a big company, has a dedicated workspace for all the new hires, right? And then the new hires are divided by cohorts. And there are specific channels that have information on various things. So for example, if you want information on where to eat out in San Francisco, or all of the documentation that you have to bring in on your first day, all of those would be answered by channels, right? So all of those questions are answered through these channels. Slack would give access to employees 2 weeks before they start. And the idea is that employees can just be prepared when they're coming in on their first day. right? So they have everything related to that. They are also sent out regular reminders related to the tasks that they have to complete. So they can also go ahead and do that. While Slack is a big organization, this may not be possible for each and every organization. So I suggest that you set up a simple structure where you can go ahead and invite new hires as a single channel guest. And for each new cohort, you can have a dedicated channel. Are there any questions at this point?
No, no questions again.
Moving on. So once the hiring procedures have been done through, then the obvious next step is to welcome new hires. So you can just have a channel where you send out introductions about everyone, a small blurb about what the employee has done, and what the employees, some of the non-known facts are. So you can just have that on a channel. And you can then go ahead and have an exclusive channel dedicated to new hires, where you can actually go ahead and discuss some of the onboarding tasks and some of the procedures onto that on that channel, right? If you need more help in onboarding employees, Donut is again a Slack add-on that would create a customized plan for you. So what Donut actually does is that it would set out tasks that have to be completed within a month or over a period of 3 months or 2 months, right? And the employees can then go ahead and complete those tasks. So Donut is quite a good tool that you can use to create a customized plan for for onboarding new hires within your organization. Uh, so next up, we would be visiting employee engagement, right? And the idea over here is that you can go ahead and gauge employee reactions to certain questions. So for example, if you look at it, you can go ahead and take employee reactions on what do you think is the employee autonomy within the organization? Are employees given enough autonomy to make decisions pertaining to their work areas? You can also talk about their managers or the management and the team, or how they feel about the company at large, right? So I have a really good recommendation for this, for doing this in Slack. Poly is a tool that will allow you to gauge employee engagement. The idea being that Poly will send out a question at the end of the day to the employees, and then employees can just go ahead and click on strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. And based on that, over time, you would be given a rating, and that would gauge the employee sentiment. So for example, if you send out a question every day regarding the food in the cafe, or the management and employee autonomy, then employees can just choose various options, and over time you'd be able to see data on how various employees have responded to these questions. So Poly is a great tool, a Slack add-on again. Now we'd be visiting some of our in-house tools. We'd be first up talking about attendance, how you can go ahead and track employees' paid time off within Slack. So we've got an in-house tool called Attendance Bot that we talked about earlier as well. And the idea is that you can just add Attendance Bot onto Slack as an app, and you can just send out direct messages to the bot. And with simple messages, it would go ahead and create vacation requests for you and send it across to your manager for approval. So for example, if you're sick and you want to take a sick leave for that, you can just say that I'm sick today and I won't be coming to office. And the bot would go across and create a vacation request and send it across to your manager, who can then approve it, and you'd get a notification on your screen saying that you'd requested for a sick leave, which has been approved by the manager, and then the employee can go ahead and take that leave, right? So Attendance Bot really simplifies the workflow of creating leaves and managers approving them, and all of the data happens in real time. So for example, if I create a leave request that goes across to my manager, the manager can go ahead and approve it in real time. So the process is quick, it is intuitive, and all the teams that we work with love the UI of the bot as well. So it's really easy to go ahead and create vacations on Attendance Bot. Moving on from the admin perspective, you can also go ahead and create vacation quotas within attendance bot. So you can define for various leave types, you can create multiple leave types in attendance bot, vacation, sick leave, working from home, working remotely, and you can assign quotas to these specific leave types. So for example, if I give only 21 vacations within a calendar year, you can go ahead and fix that, and then you would be able to see that how many leaves have the employees taken and what are the balances that they have got left. Attendance bot has some really robust reporting features related to the number of leaves that the employees have taken, the balances they have got left, and just a summary of all the employee leaves. So you can go ahead and pull up reports related to that. You can also put in things like, if the employees are allowed to roll over a certain number of leaves to the next year. So you can also set that up in the bot, take half days, hourly leaves. If you don't want to be flooded with approval requests related to work from home or working remotely, then you can always say that, these leave types are auto approved, which would mean that we wouldn't send out approval requests to your manager, but we would let them know that you're working from home and you would not be in office today, right? So that's about vacation quotas. We've got a bunch of features around maintaining transparency within the team. So if you've got channels within Slack, you can add attendance bot onto those channels. And whenever somebody is on a vacation, we would be announcing that onto a particular channel. So the idea being that you want to keep the whole team in sync regarding who's out of office and who's currently in office. You can also split these announcements by office, by department, so that all the people who are in the channel get relevant information. Another way of ensuring the same thing is that we've got a team calendar, um, pretty much like the one that you see over here, and then you can go ahead and check out all of your employees on that particular calendar. You would also be shown all of the holidays in this particular calendar, and you can just go ahead and check this calendar. Okay, Glenn is working from home today, but Sarah is in office, and you can go ahead and see that information on this particular calendar. You could also go ahead and set up various statuses. So what attendance bot does is that we would be auto updating your statuses. So for example, if you say that you're working from home today, attendance bot is going to auto update your status that you're working from home. If you're working from another office, we auto update your status again. So this is just to ensure that there is transparency within the team. A lot of teams also use attendance bot to have birthdays and work anniversaries announcements, and you can go ahead and announce people's birthdays and work anniversaries onto channels. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. Moving on, let's talk a bit about how time tracking is done within attendance bot. So the employees can clock in and clock out using attendance bot. They can also go ahead and say lunch or BRB 10 minutes to the bot, which would ensure that uh, whenever they're going out on lunch or for a break, the team knows that, right? Then they can go ahead and see their timesheet, which would give them the total number of hours that they have worked in the day. So we would give you a summary of the in time, the out time, the lunch and the break hours, and the total number of hours that you've devoted in the day. The timesheet report is basically accessible to both the manager and the employee, but the data that both these people see differs by a lot. An employee would be able to see data pertaining to only himself or herself, but the manager would be able to see data pertaining to their direct reportees. So all of the direct reportees' data would show up on a timesheet report. We will show you the total number of hours that the employee has worked on a daily basis, and then we would collate that data to also show you the total number of hours that the employee has given within a payroll cycle, like fortnightly or monthly or whatever. If you want to know at any point of time how many employees are currently punched in, how many employees are currently punched out, and how many of them are on a break, you can just come over to the punch board and view all of the information right from the admin panel. right? Great. Now we'll be talking about some of the FAQs that you get within the organization, right? They can be related to some of the HR issues, like where can I find my pay slips, or some general issues within the office saying, where can I go ahead and book a meeting room, or who do I contact if my laptop is broken or anything is broken, right? So to manage all the help desk requests, we've got another tool called Office Amp. Uh, you can go ahead and send out simple messages to the bot again, and this would create a ticket for you that can just be passed on to the category manager or the administrator, who can ensure that the that the ticket that has been raised is then resolved, right? So you can just go ahead and create tickets like what are my employee benefits, or where do I download my pay slips, and as the HR person, you would be able to go ahead and manage those requests and answer the employees on that. One of the really cool things about Office Amp is that we've got this smart Q&A feature where you can just go ahead and create knowledge base. And when an employee asks a particular question that has been asked many times before, the bot aims to auto resolve that question. So for example, if I'm asking, who do I contact if I have desktop issues or technical issues with my laptop, right? Which has been asked like a zillion times before, the bot is just going to throw up an answer that you can just contact this person, or you can just go ahead and log a ticket on this particular web page, and then we'll resolve it, etc., etc. Right? So that's the whole idea of Office Amp.
Can I just ask a question, Wilfred? Sorry. So when the employee has a question and the bot has answered the question, will that still raise a ticket, or will that be shown as resolved?
Absolutely. So what would happen is that the idea of having a smart Q&A feature is that you put in a bunch of things that have been asked before, and then we auto resolve it. So then there is no need to create another ticket out of it. The question is just resolved there and then. But we do have a feature wherein if we are not able to adequately address the question, then the employee can just go ahead and log a new issue, and then that would be addressed, that would be assigned to the category manager for that particular category. Make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Great. We would next be moving on to expense tracking. One of our in-house tools called ExpenseTron, you can go ahead and send out, again, simple messages to the bot, and this would create expenses. So for example, you can just say something like, spent £8 on coffee, or you could just say that I spent $8 on coffee, and this would create an expense out of it. You can also say something like drove 220 miles from Boston to New York, and we would create a mileage expense for you out of it. One of the coolest features of ExpenseTron is that we've got a really easy, intuitive method of uploading receipts to the bot. You can just click on this upload receipt button that you see right here, and then you'll be able to upload the receipt to the bot, and your manager will be able to see the receipt and approve the expense based on that. Moving ahead, earlier we were talking about onboarding employees. So this is just one of the onboarding tools that I'd like to mention over here is just a shout out for Lunch Train. This is a tool where that the new employees can use if you're heading out for lunch to any restaurant. They can just go ahead and make an announcement related to that, and then anybody can hop onto the train and go for lunch with that particular group. So this is just for new hires, and if you're confused about where to have lunch in SF and all of that, so you can go ahead and use Lunch Train for that. Some more tools that we'd be talking about. You can go ahead and integrate your calendar with Attendance Bot, which is a tool that we talked about earlier. So you can just go ahead and integrate your calendar. And what we do is that we block the day you are not in office, so that if anybody is trying to calendar time with you, we throw up your vacation responder saying, hey, it seems like that this person is out of office today. Why don't you try another day for calendaring time with this particular person? You can also go ahead and integrate your calendar on Slack. So you'd get notifications, all of your calendar notifications on Slack, and it really makes easy to access all of that data right from within Slack, and you don't really have to go to another calendar to be able to access that, right? Another tool that I'd like to talk about, another integration, in fact, is the Google Drive integration. So you can go ahead and integrate Google Drive with Slack. And anytime somebody uploads a document or edits a document, makes any changes, you'd be sent out a notification on Slack, right? We'll talk about creating some more channels. So you can have channels that have various diversity groups or volunteer programs. So for example, in one of the organizations that I worked with, we used Slack, and we had this program that was called Each One Teach One, and all of the people that were involved in this CSR initiative were on that channel, and we used to interact on that channel related to that volunteer program. You could, in a similar manner, also have some recognition programs for employees within the organization. Today, what we do is that anytime there is a sales win or there is a new product launch, we've created channels for that, and that is announced onto a channel, and then we make sure that the employees that have contributed to that particular project get the recognition that is due for them. You can lastly create a platform for interacting with the people that are higher up in the organization. So you can just send them out questions through a channel related to the company vision, or where is the company heading, or some of the revenue related details or anything, and then they'll be able to answer those questions for you, right? And that is, again, the objective is to maintain transparency within the organization. So you can just go ahead and create all these channels, right? So to sum up, what I would say is that moving some of the features, the HR of people of operations on a daily basis to Slack would improve the transparency that you have within the organization. You can use channels in a bunch of ways. I think that is a very powerful feature that Slack has. And some of the people operation teams can use it for a lot of things. We talked about how you can use it for hiring. We can also talk about how you can use it to maintain a good work culture, having recognition programs or professional development clubs and everything of that sort. So I think that maintains a good mood within the organization, and you can also go ahead and improve transparency that you have within the organization. And that's the whole idea of bringing the key functions of HR to Slack, right? Building a good company culture, recognizing and engaging employees, and making hiring and onboarding more efficient for the HR team and for the organization at large. So I think with that, we have come to the end of the presentation. I am happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
I think for me personally, it would be useful to see the integration of the calendar in Slack.
Sure. As in, how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, please.
Yep, sure. Let me pull up a Slack screen. So what you can do is that you've got the apps section right here, and then you can just search up the Google Calendar or the Outlook Calendar. So that would just show up. So for example, this is the Google Calendar that you have. So you can just click on install, and this would be integrated with your Slack. And so whenever somebody calendars time with you, or whenever you've got a meeting coming up, these notifications would then come onto your Slack, and you wouldn't have to go to the calendar to be able to view that data. And this happens for all the calendars. It can happen for your Google Calendar, Outlook Calendar, irrespective of what calendar you use, you can do the integration. Similarly, another integration that I make use of quite a lot personally is the Google Drive integration, because all day I am interacting on Google Drive, and we are uploading documents and editing documents, and I want to stay on top of that. So personally, the Google Drive integration helps me quite a lot. So these are two integrations that I would really suggest you go ahead and make use of. And if you have any feedback related to that, you can let us know how did that work out for you. Make sense?
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense. But also, like, if I go ahead with the Google Drive integration, which I use all the time as well, would that give the access only to me, or would that grant access to everyone else in the channel?
Only to you. So basically, the app section that you have over here are the apps that you can add only for yourself. So the Google Drive integration would be only for you and not for everyone else.
Okay, perfect. That's good to know.
Great.
All right.
Thanks. It's always difficult to ask the first question. So any more questions?
I think that's it from me, actually.
We've got a question. So let's see. Oh, no more questions. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to you too. So thanks a lot for joining in. This has been great. And so the idea is that we'd be doing these webinars quite frequently, I think. And we'd be sending out emails to you guys. So anytime you want to join in for a webinar, feel free to do that. We'd be talking in details about some of the other functions within Slack, like how you can go ahead and do expense tracking and help desk management within Slack. So those are some of the features that in our future webinars we'll be visiting in detail. So if any of that interests you, feel free to sign up for that, and we'd be happy to have you. So great. Thanks a lot for joining in today. This has been great. I really appreciate the time you've taken out to attend this webinar, and I hope to see you in the future. Thanks a lot. Have a great day ahead.
Bye.
Bye-bye.